So the soloist comes in on measure 90 after a set of consecutive 16th notes. So very insistent by the orchestra. And then suddenly the violinist has to come in. So there has to be a big difference, essentially, between the quintuplets and the triplets. So one mistake it's a decision. I'm sure it's a conscious decision, and I will leave it up to you to decide exactly how to pace the rhythms. But one thing that a lot of violinists do is something like this. So you can see that there's a huge difference when you actually play according to the rhythms that are more or less distinctly written, and when you take a lot of liberties. When you take a lot of liberties, it's a lot more of a recitative, so it has a lot more of a singing quality to it, which I feel like this piece does have. But in order to really bring out and to really come in as a soloist, it really helps the orchestra and you to really set exactly the triplets, because triplets, as we will continue to explore, are so important in this piece. The idea of the 3 in the 3/4 to Brahms is something so distinct and magical. So I'm going to keep going, and as we look in measure 95, we'll see that here we have a syncopation where we're almost fighting and struggling against what the orchestra is playing, and we have something really consistent from the orchestra this entire time. And then again in measure 96 we break back into the triplets finally, and then I'm going to play until about measure 98, and then we will continue to explore what those 16th notes mean consecutively. So here's the beginning again. And here comes the syncopation. So you can see that it's so important to give the orchestra and yourself space in measure 95 and really bringing out those syncopations, because you really need to feel the essentially the broken quality of the rhythm here. That's something so unexpected. So again, here's measure 95. So here now, for the first time, the violinist is playing 16th notes. It's not quite as regular as before when the orchestra sets up this very regular, which is more of a figuration to help the violinist come in with a big bang. So here we have an escalation. So it means to me that the 16th notes here are meant to speed up and leading somewhere rather than just being a regular set of 16th notes. However, they need to be distinctly in relation to the triplets you played in measure 96 and in measure 95. So we see that in measure 95 we have basically a feeling of syncopation with 8th notes and quarter notes, and then we move on to measure 96 with triplets. And then in measure 97, here's where we begin kind of a scale, almost like a chromatic scale, up all the way until measure 102, where we really begin the arpeggios, and that's really when the high point of the entire opening is. So I'm going to play again from measure 95, and I want you to follow how do we increase with the 16th notes in energy all the way until measure 102. So here's 95. So you can see that here is like a very difficult and fast passage that requires a lot of practice with double stops in order for the 16th notes to really come through, because they are meant to be extremely energetic, and they have to somehow also each one be a little bit more than the other. So basically, I would say that in measure 97, where we have then the one following that can start a little bit quieter. So what we would do is we would practice this diligently with double stops. So because the harmonies are also here rather important, and when it's that fast, all you hear are harmonies. So you won't really get to hear the individual notes as clearly when it's that fast, but what's most important is that you get the chromatic increase all the way up until measure 102. So what happens here is that by practicing in these double stops, you're really able to understand the harmonic progression a little bit better as well. So in octaves first, and then broken up, you can practice in rhythms. And then in opposite rhythms, and then even more fancy. Well, you can continue with the next set of 16th notes to make it more continuous. So the next set would be, so that one is basically the same intervals as the first one that starts on the B flat diminished, and and then next one is same set of patterns. So practicing those octaves, fingered octaves, are a big thing here in Brahms. So following, but it's really important to also realize that just because the first pattern is set doesn't mean that the fingerings will stay for all of the other ones as well, because the chords also change, as we can see. So here we have the fingered octave, and then next, even higher, is the F. Important one to really make bright and clear, this F sharp here. It's like the D major chord. It's the closest thing we get to D major yet. However, we're going to continue from here. So after you play the flurry of 16th notes, which I will demonstrate for you once more, we will land finally on the D major for a little bit of time on the at measure 102, and then we have a set of arpeggios. Now, I want to talk about rhythm again here, because what's really fascinating is that Brahms here writes a D cello rondo out in rhythm, so you don't need to worry about doing that yourself. You just have to follow the rhythm precisely. So in here, it's also extremely important that the rhythm is extremely precise, because the orchestra has their own counter melody. And if you will play whatever you feel like here, which tends to be the case because it's such a flowing, expressive part, even if it's still an accompaniment, we have to keep it in mind that the orchestra should really shine here. I mean, you will always shine, no matter what. It is a concerto, but it's really important that we really want to emphasize that. So starting in measure 102, we have sextuplets, which to me are just twice as fast as the triplets we have played before, but more regular. So all the way until actually in 104, now we slow down to quintuplets. So instead of 6, we now have 5 groups. Now, and then that continues for a bit, and then we're still going all the way until 112. Now we're even slowing down even more. Now we're in 16th notes, so now groups of 4. Okay, so still going, still trying to explore how we're getting to that D major. And then going all the way until